This is my favorite wall by far. And it all goes on the business card. How lucky am I? I have the best career in the world. Now, it must be said, Toshi Duncan is the ghostwriter of Please, Please, Please by Sabrina Carpenter. Tell me this isn't an actual line from Challengers. Heartbreak is one thing, my ego's another. I beg you, don't embarrass me, motherfucker. Challengers is by far my favorite movie of the entire year because there's only one thing that I love more than tennis, and that is boys kissing and boys moaning. Before we get started, thank you so much Rocket Money for sponsoring today's video.
Thank you so much to Rocket Money for sponsoring today's video. I cannot tell you how many hours of my life that I have completely wasted on trying to cancel subscriptions that I have forgotten that I even have. It should not be as hard as it is to cancel subscriptions, but they make it hard for a reason. Thankfully, that is why Rocket Money is here to help. Rocket Money is the personal finance app that helps you cancel subscriptions, lowers bills, and helps manage your money a lot better. Trust me, it has helped me a bunch. Rocket Money safely and securely identifies recurring charges and cancels unwanted subscriptions for you. You can even cancel from within the app with just a couple of taps. No need to worry about customer service calls. Rocket Money has helped save its customers an average of $720 a year, with over $500 million in canceled subscriptions. I've been using Rocket Money for longer than I have even been working with them, and it's helped me save so much money with reoccurring subscriptions. It's honestly kind of embarrassing for me with how many subscriptions I had and didn't even realize I had because just the amount of them overwhelmed me. I would forget that my 30-day trial period had ended. I had ones that I didn't even use in a really long time, and I was wasting money for absolutely no reason until I found Rocket Money. Take control of your finances today. Make sure to go to rocketmoney.com/Nicole Rafiee and you can get started with Rocket Money for free. The link will be on screen and also in the description. Thank you, Rocket Money.
So the last time that I did a Chronically Online Girl Explains a Movie Lore video, I got absolutely roasted alive on Twitter. I will never forgive any of you for that. God forbid that a woman not only likes a movie, but likes pleasing the algorithm. And if there's one thing that I really like doing, it's pleasing. I am a pleaser. I love to please. Anyway, so I heard that you guys hated that, so I'm back with another one. If I get to talk about movies that I like in front of a big ass wall and get to print out all these photos that I get to have like my own little personal shrine that I get to stare at for many nights on end, it's not my fault that the algorithm favors me and people want to watch me when I print out big ass photos of rodent like men and I do my like little humiliation ritual at CVS when I print these out, and Lord knows I will do anything for people to listen to my voice. I'm sure most of you have seen Challengers by now at least 3 times. It's me. I've seen Challengers 4 times, 3 times in theaters, and then yesterday, I don't know if it counts as me like watching the movie if I just keep watching the bedroom scene over and over again, but I did watch it for 2 hours on end. And today I want to give you a breakdown on some of the scenes that you may have missed out on, hidden meanings, clues, and like little conspiracy theories that are fan-made. Does it look like I want to explain to you guys who have not seen Challengers yet what it is about? Yes! I do. I want to talk about any chance I get and hear my own voice. This may come as a shock to some of you all, but it is not porn. I know, bummer. This entire movie jumps you in and out of timelines nonstop. They basically treat you like you're this like little tennis ball going back and forth, and expect you to keep up. So keep up. Let's get started. We're going in chronological order, baby. 2006 Boys Junior Double title at the US Open. I definitely know what that is. I love sports. Back in 2006, friends, perhaps lovers, friends Patrick Zweig and Art Donaldson win the boys junior doubles title at the US Open. From the start, you can tell that they have a pretty playful relationship considering that Art literally like flicks him off behind his back right before pretty much Patrick hogs the ball and wins the game. At least that's what it looked like to me. Believe it or not, I know I have a tennis racket for Five Below, but I'm not a tennis player. Patrick has the ball pretty much the whole entire time and wins the game. Literally does this like special move where he like sticks the tennis racket between his legs and they win and they hug and they kiss. They literally are doing foreplay on the tennis court. Note that they are considered fire and ice. Art being ice and Patrick being fire. Someone on Reddit mentioned that they like to think of Robert Frost's poem Fire and Ice, how he depicts fire as desire and ice as hatred, and how that applies to how Toshi views them. Keep that in mind. Throughout the movie, we even see Patrick and Art kind of dressed as blue for being ice and red for being fire, and like when they switch, it's interesting. And I think that totally was done intentionally. And important to note, Josh O'Connor, who plays Patrick Zweig, says that in real life he is like fire and that Mike Feist is more like ice. And it does kind of seem from interviews that Josh O'Connor is a bit more like Patrick, considering that he even openly admitted that he like strayed away from the diets and like the strict exercise routine that they had to do, kind of similar to what Patrick's vibe would actually do. Meanwhile, Art is seen as more committed to his craft. And maybe Josh O'Connor didn't have to try as hard, or maybe he, strayed away from the plan, but he still fucking killed it. Because as we see throughout the movie, Patrick is very, very impulsive, and Art is seen as very stable. We see the next scene start off with basically Art being like, please, Patrick, let me win. Like, let me win like one game, please.
If it matters to you so much, I can just give it to you. Really? Yeah.
And so right off the bat, we learn Patrick is a better tennis player than Art. Or it seems like Art just cannot seem to beat Patrick. Patrick immediately is like, oh my God, yeah, like I'll let you win. I love you, babe. But Art insists like Patrick really has to play. He can't just retire. He needs to look like he really beat him. This movie is so good at callbacks. There are callbacks all within the movie. And this is a major one because we will see this trope playing out again at the end. Almost kind of exactly, but this whole like let me win thing being induced by someone else. And Art really wants to win this game the next day, this finals with Patrick, not because of his love for the sport, but because he wants to impress someone. That someone being his grandma.
Don't guilt me with your dying grandmother.
Next scene, we see Patrick asking if Art had heard of the Adidas party happening on Long Island that night. And Art, taking his craft a little bit more seriously, is like, no, like we have a final tomorrow, like I'm not going to that. And Patrick being like, no, you don't fucking get it. Tashi Duncan, who is going to be there, is so beautiful. You have never seen her play before. And that's where Tashi Duncan comes in, okay? Tashi being only 18, she's already a fucking star. She has fans in the crowd. Everyone's already cheering for her. This is also where we hear the music start as soon as she comes onto the court, with the music score being by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. It's this funky, sexy techno that just plays all throughout the movie. And I would like to note that every single time that this score comes on is when the game is really on between Patrick and Art. It's not always necessarily when they are actually in a match, but it is when the game is happening, quite literally, between them two for Tashi. Also, yeah times 10 is like stuck in my head all the time. Like, yeah. It's very sinister and evil how catchy they made it. There was a lot of feedback about how loud the music really was and how maybe it was like too loud. I personally think that it was perfect for the movie because it shows how really in it they really were. It was not fucking background music. Like, it kind of like drove the scene. So before Tashi even begins playing, Art is completely like blown away. And Patrick's like, I fucking told you. I told you she's hot and sexy. She's beautiful. Like, I told you that. Art and Patrick's movements completely mimic each other, both playing back at the same time, both keeping their eyes on Tashi at the same time, even when she doesn't have the ball. Matching boaters, even perhaps. Now, Patrick automatically admires Tashi's hotness and beauty, and I mean, he says that, while Art immediately notices her tennis skills first.
Look at that fucking backhand.
It's clear by just how they talk about her, but also seen throughout the movie, that Patrick is attracted to her initially as a person, her physical beauty, her charisma. Meanwhile, Art is more attracted to her because he sees her as a tennis player first. Patrick immediately grabs Art's leg when Tashi scores. And this is not the first time that we see their intimacy, okay? Like, these two are clearly comfortable with each other. They have a history. Important to know. I don't know about you, but I'm not grabbing my friend's thighs all the time, okay? Unless we have tension. Is it insanely fun to watch two guys completely obsess over a girl while she is like performing her craft, doing the thing that she is the best at? Yes, it is fun to watch two men be absolutely desperate for a girl. Now, this is where Tashi screams. One of these, okay? We only see this twice in the movie. This is kind of the first time that we see Tashi break this like humble approach that she has. Later on in the movie, she admits that her and Anna Mueller, her competitor, her and Anna completely understood each other and they were in love. And that is ultimately what drives Tashi, is good fucking tennis, and for those kind of 15 seconds out of an entire game where they completely understand each other and it is actually truly a game. We also see Anna Mueller smash her racket, which we learn that she is a sore loser, racist bitch. So later on, Adidas has this huge party on Long Island where Tashi's kind of like the face of it all with Adidas. Initially on my first watch, I was like, wow, Tashi is loaded, because it seems like that is her house. Like, this is her party. Honestly, I've noticed so many things on the second and third watch that I did not notice initially on the first one because I was just trying to keep up. But Tashi is not actually affluent. This is simply the Adidas party. Also, note how Art decided to change into a cute little pink top, where before he was wearing like this green shirt, and Patrick is wearing exactly the same outfit that he was wearing before. Like his sweaty ass, musty ass little outfit that he wore after his set. He stayed in that. Art was like, I need to change for my girl. And Patrick cannot stop talking about like, oh my God, like she's gonna have such a legacy. She's gonna have a foundation. She's gonna turn her family into millionaires. And he's just kind of like, this is fucking crazy, like, and laughing about it. And Art's like, do not make fun of her.
She's a remarkable young woman.
And Patrick immediately is like, okay, well,
Let her fuck me with a racket.
Like I said, I think that the dynamic between how Art and Patrick view her is completely clear. Art is enamored by her tennis skills, and Patrick is just enamored, but he is not looking up to her like she is some sort of god. He's like, she's hot, she's a hottie, she's gonna be really fucking successful. Now, Patrick is supposed to be in a relationship with another girl back at his school at this time, but we learn he is a bit of a womanizer and willing to climb any social ladder that he needs to in order to get where he wants to be. In terms of who he's playing, how he makes his money, where he's sleeping that night. More on that later. While Art, not even speaking to Tashi yet, has this like idealized version of Tashi in his head already. This glorified version of Tashi, honestly. Like, she is like the Virgin Mary. If I had a nickel for every single time that Luca Guadagnino, the director of the movie, put his lead in a blue outfit and made them dance seductively, that would later be like a huge fucking thing on TikTok, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it is weird that it happened twice. Zendaya noted during this dancing scene that she was not actually dancing to Hot in Here by Nelly, but instead she was dancing to Time Will Crawl by David Bowie that was playing on set. I don't know if they initially planned on keeping Time Will Crawl into the final version of the movie, but honestly does not feel very fitting for the time period considering it's 2006, or like the party scene in general. However, I think it would have been very beautiful. Not that I didn't like Hot in Here, but I really do wish that they chose a different song. I think that it would have been pretty cool, but it's very fitting. It humanizes Tashi for a moment, for like a fucking moment. We see this side to her other than this like stoic side to her where it's like, oh my god, she is just a teenage girl dancing with all of her friends at this party for her. And she isn't this like enigma. The same kind of gawking that Art and Patrick were giving Tashi while she was playing tennis is the same way that they're now looking at her while she's dancing on the dance floor. Fucking creeps. Weirdos. But is it nice to see 2 men being obsessed with a woman who is just so effortlessly beautiful like Zendaya? Well, yes. Even though the score by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross isn't even playing at this point, Hot in Here is by Nelly, the game is already on between Art and Patrick. They are already competing for Tashi, and they haven't even spoken a single word to her yet. Because Patrick and Art are sprinting to introduce themselves first to Tashi. And Tashi off the bat automatically knows who they are.
Fire and ice, right?
But she doesn't know which one's which. And Patrick is like,
What do you think?
Throughout the movie, we also see Tashi looking back and forth at Art and Patrick the same way one would if you are sitting in the sidelines watching a game of tennis. The same way that she is looking at Art and Patrick play tennis in other scenes in the movie, like present day, is the same way that she looks at them when they are having conversations. I'm not talking about just like moving your eyes, like full on moving of the head. I fully think it's intentional. Even when she's not playing tennis, she is fucking playing tennis. Tashi immediately recognizes that Art is going to Stanford, and you can see Patrick's face drop. And this is not the only time that we see this. When Patrick's bids for attention get declined, or suddenly the attention is placed on Art instead between Art and Tashi, and he is being ignored, you can physically see the disappointment in him. It's like actually quite pathetic and sad. But Tashi recognizes this. Tashi recognizes this deep, immense pain that Patrick is feeling, and she fucking eats this up because it fuels her ego. Because she knows what's happening. She's watching the 2 compete over her, and she loves it. So Tashi, being the popular girl that she is, has to take some photos, and Art and Patrick are like debating back and forth if they should wait for her, if they should go, if they should wait for her, if they should go, but they end up waiting for her. Tashi points out that like they have a final tomorrow, like shouldn't they be preparing for that? Art immediately tries to brush it off, being like, oh my god, it's the juniors, it doesn't matter. While Patrick is also like, well, we both know how it's going to turn out.
It's just the juniors. Both know how it's gonna go.
What I'm assuming is referring to the fact that he is planning on letting Art win, so he doesn't really need to try. Now, at this point, I don't think Patrick is thinking that Tashi is going to actually go watch them play the finals, and so I think he still fully is committed to his plan of letting Art win that game. Art immediately thinks that the best way to talk to her is about tennis, asking her about one of her points, while Patrick is like, do you smoke
Cigarettes?
Yeah.
No.
The duality of how they choose to speak to her is clear, and that stays relevant for the rest of the movie. Patrick immediately has way more confidence and charisma than Art. Art seems to try to be strategic and planned ice and how to get her interest. We also find out on the walk down to the beach that Patrick's house is bigger than this house that they are currently at. Like, they refer to this house being like a palace, and he's like, yeah, my house is bigger than this. Us learning he is in fact a rich kid. One can assume going to a tennis academy, you probably are gonna be a rich kid, but Patrick being spoiled rich is kind of the basis for his entire life. Initially, when we first see Tashi and Art talk about school and going to Stanford and how disappointed Patrick gets, one might assume it's because like, oh, maybe he can't afford to go to school. Maybe he can't go to school. When it turns out Patrick is in fact rich and could go to school if he wanted to.
And what does your parents' place look like? Exactly.
not like this.
No, it's bigger.
But instead, he plans on just going pro with tennis as soon as possible. And Patrick does not understand Tashi's entire angle with going to college.
Why do you want to go beat up on a bunch of girls who are the best players at the high schools?
And he's even open about like, yeah, hitting a ball with a racket is a great way at avoiding having a real job. So he is trying to go pro ASAP. The way that Patrick is seemingly talking about tennis makes it seem like his relationship with it is a lot more messy and convoluted than Tashi and Art's relationship with it. It doesn't seem like he has as much respect for it, not nearly as much as maybe Art does. But ultimately, the person who has the most respect for tennis is Tashi. And Tashi even points out how this is an issue. She's like, okay, that's your issue with tennis. Like, you think that it's something that you just do. You think it's about expressing yourself and doing your thing. And she notices that in his messy serve. He has this messy ass serve where he's like, I guess you're not supposed to do that. But Patrick's like, it works. If it works, it works. That's the best way to describe Patrick, is that like, if it works, it works. The heart wants what the heart wants. It is what it is. And Tashi openly says, like, Patrick, you're not a tennis player.
You don't know what tennis is.
Because tennis is a relationship. Tashi is searching for that feeling that she had with Anna Mueller on the court for those 15 seconds where they were in love. She is desperately searching for that. Acknowledging that Patrick probably will never understand that fully, but she is striving for one day Art to get to that point where he understands that. I think it is so funny when Art is like, you screamed. I cannot tell you how many times I'm doing like the most mundane task in the middle of the day, and all I hear in the back of my head is like, you screamed. But as soon as Art gets Tashi's attention again, Patrick is so disappointed. Like, his face falls immediately. And I have to ask, is this because he is not getting attention from Tashi, or is this because he's not getting attention from Art? Art being a lot more desperate for Tashi's number than like the suave way that Patrick is trying to get Tashi's number. And Tashi tries to clarify she is not a homewrecker.
I'm not a homewrecker.
Patrick invites her back to their hotel room since they are staying at the same hotel in Flushing, enticing her with beer, but she laughs and is like, yeah, fucking right. Something that we will see a callback to later on in the movie. Now we're at the Flushing hotel room. It's dingy, it's dirty, it's gross because two boys are staying there. They're smoking, they're flipping cards into their like little juniors doubles cup, literally picking at toe calluses, and their beds are pushed together. Their beds are pushed together. I just want to like lay that out there. Like, their beds are in fact pushed together. Like, they didn't come like that. Like, there are two full beds completely pushed together. Art's completely in denial of the possibility of Tashi even coming, but Patrick is like hopeful. But that's because Patrick has way more confidence than Art does. As soon as Tashi knocks, they are panicking. They are scrambling, trying to clean up a little bit. Patrick puts on Art's shirt like it's nothing. A lot of sharing of clothes in this movie. Tashi's outside the door laughing to herself because she knows what she is doing to these guys, that they're panicking over her. They're sitting, they're drinking beer, listening to music. Tashi admits that like she could never go to boarding school unless she had like a scholarship because her family didn't want her growing up in that kind of environment. The environment being like, you know, being alone in a room with two guys drinking. But Tashi sees this as her time to pry. She sees them in their vulnerable state. They're nervous, they're drinking. She's like, I'm gonna get fucking information out of these guys. Because at the end of the day, they're just happy that she's there. They're just surprised by that in general. Art has this famous little recurring line where he's like,
Aren't you everybody's type?
once again, Tashi's literally looking back and forth between Art and Patrick as if she is watching a game of tennis. And Tashi quickly wants to make it messy. She instantly sees that there is some sort of weird chemistry between the two of them, and maybe it's because the both of them have maybe explored each other's bodies before. Tashi is a sneaky girl because she is able to get Patrick to tell the story of how he taught Art how to jerk off for the first time. Art is clearly like very embarrassed and weirded out by this.
I mean, no.
And Patrick is way more nonchalant, maybe necessarily because he was the teacher in this situation and not the student. So they start talking about the girl that they were thinking about while they were, you know, exploring their own bodies. And Art was thinking about Kat Zimmerman. But was Patrick thinking about Kat Zimmerman? This is where Uncle Ace by Blood Orange starts playing and the game is starting again between the two of them. Patrick makes sure to make Art look like an idiot, saying that he like looks like he spilled milk all over himself.
Covering all of it. What? He looked like a kid who spilled milk all over his lap. Jesus, Patrick.
And Tashi's like, okay, there's definitely something going on between these two, and she's fucking into it. So she decides to sit on the bed. She's like, come on, come here. In the most true to character fashion, Art asks which one of us, whereas Patrick immediately just gets up and goes and sits down next to her. Tashi first leads onto Patrick, making him think that she's gonna kiss him first, when in reality she just turns around and instead just like makes out with Art. Fakes him out, makes him think that she's gonna go back in for more, turns around, starts making out with Patrick. I love the threesome movie. I cannot tell you how loud I was cackling when she literally pulls her hair back behind her shoulders, invites them both to kiss her neck, and then she's laughing to herself while they're doing it because it's fucking funny. She just got them right where she wanted. She's like, look at my little bitches. She pushes them both away while they're both getting into it, to kind of be like, look yourself, you fucking fools. Like, embarrassing them. Speaking of Entertainment Weekly about the scene, director Luca said that the moment wasn't in screenwriter Justin's original script for the movie. I don't think it was in the script at the beginning, not at all. We discussed at length with Justin the concept that the triangle needs to flesh out the possibility that all the corners touch. For me, it was all about staying there, staying with them, staying with the joke, staying with the moment of embarrassment, followed by the moment of excitement, and eventually to show the geometry the movie sets up in the moment, the power that she had over them. My personal favorite part of the movie, Tashi goes and sits back and smiles while they continue to make out with each other. They know very well that Tashi is not there anymore. They are kissing each other. They are into it, and I love it. And while she's sitting back and like watching them make out, it's of course like in a literal sense, but I also think of it in kind of like a metaphorical sense where she's like, okay, I'm playing God right now. I'm going to run this show the way that I want to. I'm going to interfere with this. She kind of did the equivalent of like when you're playing The Sims and you make all of your Sims go into the pool and then you take out the ladder and you're like, I'm going to play God and make them die. Or like taking a prey away from its predator. Like if you see like a little baby bunny getting choked out by a snake and she's like, I'm going to play God and save that bunny. Maybe she shouldn't do it, but it's fun and it's better this way. And I like it. And I would do the same if I was her. While I definitely think that Patrick had real romantic feelings for Art, I think he became kind of more attracted to Art when he started lusting after someone else, aka Tashi. Kind of same can be said about like, you know, the Kat Zimmerman situation. He's kind of like a cock. And Tashi immediately clocked Art's codependency that he has for Patrick. I don't necessarily think that Art had romantic feelings towards Patrick, but I think he was definitely codependent, which then he later becomes codependent with Tashi, of course. Anyway, Tashi was fucking into it, watching them make out. And then she's like, okay, I'm gonna go to bed. See you. And Art immediately is like, please? Can we please have your number? Please?
Please?
It's fucking pathetic. I love to see it. And I would do the same for Zendaya. Tashi said that whoever wins the finals game tomorrow can finally have her number. And Art immediately has no confidence. And like Tashi has to instill that in him and be like,
You can beat him, you know that?
and she says what she means, that she wants to watch some
Good fucking tennis.
Patrick's promises of letting Art win are out the window. And so is Art's peanuts. The next day, we probably see Art play tennis harder than he ever has in his entire life. Like, we never really see him with that kind of drive again, playing tennis until the end of the movie. And Patrick still manages to beat him with charisma and like through that like little through the leg shot, you know? Seems like Art and Patrick are back at their tennis academy. They're at practice and Art is begging for Patrick to tell him if they had hooked up. And Patrick's like, no, she literally told me that she would stop seeing me if I kiss and told, so no. The way that Patrick and Art are both moving together like so in sync, like little synchronized swimmers, literally like putting their bag down at the same time, like them getting down to stretch at the same time. They're clearly made for each other. The music starts again and the game starts again when Art demands that Patrick give him a signal if they slept together or not.
If the two of you slept together, do a normal search.
So that he doesn't have to verbally say yes or no, but he can just give him a signal, a hint. Art even says that he's very happy for him, he just doesn't want to feel left out. And I feel like that is literally the basis of the entire movie. All of them are happy for each other, they just don't want to feel fucking left out. And one of them is always going to be left out. Because it's true, the dynamic does work best when it is all three of them at the same time. And the cutest scene ever, Patrick catches Art's gum when he spits it out, something that we see a callback for later on. So Patrick tells Art that he has this tick that he puts the ball up to the neck of the racket when he's about to serve, because who knows Art better than Art knows himself? Patrick. And that's when we find out that Patrick and Tashi did in fact sleep together because, you know, he puts up his little signal to the ball, to the racket. As soon as Patrick turns around, Art's smile just drops. Like immediately, like so fucking disappointed because he's left out of the love triangle. I think at first glance, we're like definitely like, oh my God, this sweet little pathetic, poor little baby Art. But we do in fact start to see his more manipulative side of things. He knows how to get information out of people. He doesn't like feeling left out. He makes people believe that he has, you know, these best intentions. But then we start to see how he uses people's vulnerability and information as an upper hand to help himself. Because as soon as Patrick turns around, the smile is right back on Art's face. Fast forward, we are at Stanford now. We see this is when Art goes to Tashi's practices and invites her out for lunch, which we then learn that Tashi has plans of going pro in the spring of that school year. And Tashi also mentions that they should get dinner all together when Patrick comes for the Pepperdine match, Art does not seem that interested. Like, it's kind of weird. It's like, why are you not excited to go see your best friend? Which he then says to Tasha that he's just surprised that they're still seeing each other.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Putting this doubt into Tashi's head that, is he maybe sleeping with someone else? Is he cheating on her? Like, what does Art know that Tashi doesn't? And Art tries to push on to Tashi that Patrick is not in love with her, even though that isn't Art's business and he just does not have the information to back that up. And Tashi does not seem to care if that is true or not, because that isn't what she's seeking. And I genuinely believe her.
What makes you think I want someone to be in love with me?
Upon first watch, I was like, oh my God, she's hurt deep down. Like, she wants to be loved. Like, she wants Patrick to be in love with her, obviously. She's clearly coping. But upon second and third watch, I'm like, no, I think she really means it. And this is where Art does this little callback and he's like,
Don't you think you deserve it?
Jesus fucking Christ.
I mean, who wouldn't be in love with you?
but Tashi sees through the cracks of how Art is manipulative in this way and how he's not a faithful friend. He isn't supportive of his best friend's relationship as maybe he should be. So now we're at Art's tennis practice and Patrick comes and sees him before he even goes to see his own girlfriend. It's really like they've never been apart, or like Art never even talked shit about him before. But you can see Patrick kind of being judgmental of Tashi having all these banners up for her. They call her the Dunkenator at college. You can kind of see him like looking down upon that. Art tries to pry to see if Patrick is seeing anybody on tour. Patrick has this immediate automatic intimacy and closeness with Art, like pulling his chair closer, feeling comfortable, like eating really close to him. The churro scene was actually improvised because Josh O'Connor, the actor, was just hungry and wanted to be eating the churros. Trisha Paytas mentioned this in a podcast episode, but the way they even eat food in this movie is extremely sexual. Even though there are no sex scenes in the movie, it makes you feel like there are. And part of that being with the food they use. I'm talking hot dogs, churros, bananas, like the mouth sounds. I have a really, really hard time with mouth noises and chewing sounds and everything. It did not bother me one bit, okay? The same kind of love that I have towards like my cats eating, like I should be disgusted by it. I fucking love it. That's how I feel about Art and Patrick eating. Yes, they're eating! Speaking of which, I did actually find an exclusive scene from the movie that got cut. I got exclusive access to it, so I did want to bring you guys to that. Anyway, Art is being quite sinister in this scene, okay? Because he's trying to make it seem like he doesn't want Patrick to get hurt from Tashi, when in reality, moments before we saw him telling Tashi that he doesn't want to see her get hurt by Patrick. He's just like instilling these little thoughts into their brain, being like, this relationship is not what it's supposed to be. I think things should be different. I'm gonna play God now. I'm taking the ladder out of the Sims pool. But Patrick sees through this and is like, I'm hype about this. I fucking love that you're excited about this.
Even if that something is my girlfriend.
And tells him that that's what's been missing from his tennis. Unfortunately, Art needs this kind of angst to drive him in his tennis games. Patrick is just simply able to have this passion and charisma while in the games and this connection that he has with other players. But Art, in order to have confidence, needs to kind of be having angst in his personal life. And without that, he lacks the confidence or will to play. So Patrick and Tashi start hooking up. She doesn't even respond when Patrick says that he misses her, which I fucking love. The only time that she has something to say to him while they're hooking up is literally to bring up the topic of tennis. Tashi starts telling him how he could improve in his games, and which Patrick starts being like, when were you gonna tell me about Art? When were you gonna tell me that you guys talked about something? Note while they're hooking up, the times that Patrick seems to be the most into it is quite literally when Tashi is talking about Art. He's smart, he's good looking and he's very good at tennis. All things that he should be intimidated by. Patrick's quite literally moaning every single time that Tashi mentions a good quality about Art while hooking up. And Tashi says to him, that's your problem. You always think you've won before the match is over.
Were you talking about tennis?
And the music starts again, meaning the competition between Art and Patrick is starting again for Tashi without Art even having to be in the room. We can see throughout these conversations that Tashi is having with both of these men that a lot of times we can't tell the difference between whether or not they are talking about tennis or a relationship, because we could interpret that in like two different ways. Like, that's your problem. You always think you won before the match is even over. That could be referring to relationships. That could quite literally be referring to tennis. Quite literally even says, are we talking about tennis? She's like, what else do we have to talk about? It's like, can we not? She's like, sure. So they have nothing to talk about. Hook up, over, done. That was automatically a major turn off for her. She was completely turned off and she's like already in like game mode. Tashi admits to Patrick that she wants to help him with his tennis because she does not want him to suck because then that is embarrassing for her. Patrick then shits on Tashi for having these college fans, calling her the Dunkinator, putting down what she is doing and what she has built for herself, even though her playing college tennis is very strategic to her entire career. And Tashi ultimately would like to be Patrick's coach if he so allowed it. They start fighting because they have differences in strategy versus talent, coaching, and what ultimately insults her is that Patrick says that
You're not a member of my fan club?
I'm your peer.
he isn't her student, and that's when she decides that they have nothing in common anymore. Patrick leaves, steals her shirt, and he's not going to the game. So now we are watching Tashi's game against Pepperdine. And who is there? The true, real member of her fan club? None other than Art. Art is a fan at heart. From the beginning, a lapdog, a kiss ass. He is a fan of Tashi Duncan, the tennis player. Tashi, though, notices that Patrick did not come to see her play. This puts her out of the zone, and regardless of playing against someone who is supposed to be easy to beat, Sally, whatever the fuck from Pepperdine, this frustration and lack of prep and, you know, emotional turmoil that she has gets her out of the zone and leads to a major knee injury, which Art is immediately there, like literally like jumping literal fences for her. Patrick attempts to go see Tashi in the trainer's room, and she will absolutely not have it. She is kicking him out of the room.
Get out! Tashi! Out!
And Art is too.
Patrick, get the fuck out!
Completely breaking the relationship. Art has made it clear right then and there, this is now Tashi and I. You are completely out of the picture. You were out of the throuple. You got kicked out of the throuple. Sucks to suck. Fast forward to 3 years later in Cincinnati. Something important to note is that Art's tennis coach is actually speaking German to him. Is this something that they learned at tennis academy? Maybe, perhaps. But it is interesting that Art is the only one that pronounces Patrick Zweig's last name correctly, like with a V rather than a W, because everyone else pronounces it Patrick Zweig. Art and Tashi go to Applebee's, where we learn that Tashi is actually helping being a setting partner for a different tennis player, pretty much now that her own personal tennis career is over. Art suggests that maybe Tashi can become his assistant coach, where Tashi's like, I don't think that can happen because you quite literally were in love with me. I don't think that that's a good idea. But Art is like, that was a long time ago. And Tashi's like, you're not denying it. You never said if you're still in love with me or not. And Tashi's like, what the fuck? So you're not in love with me anymore?
So you say you're not in love with me anymore?
It's funny that considering prior to college at the beach scene, Tashi did say to Patrick that
I don't want my only skill in life to be hitting a ball with a racket.
Yet here she is at Applebee's and saying to Art that her only skill in life was hitting a ball with a racket.
Unfortunately, my only skill in life is hitting a ball with a racket.
When she's being vulnerable and talking about pretty much the end of her career and being like, what was I gonna do, kill myself? Art talks about his regret and how different life could have been had he beaten Patrick that day and had gotten Tashi's number. Maybe Tashi wouldn't have been injured. Maybe this situation would have been entirely different. But ultimately, he is interested in Tashi being on his team because Art wants to win. However, he still does not have the confidence to say that he could beat Patrick if they were going to be playing tennis now. That is something that Art never has the confidence to do, is to beat Patrick, basically. And this is where Tashi says, Art, you never said whether or not you're still in love with me. To which Art is like, who wouldn't be?
Who wouldn't be?
Who wouldn't be isn't everyone. I think the contrast between Art and Patrick is really exciting for Tashi because they both have what each other lack. Art wanting the coaching aspect from her. He wanted to be a part of her fan club. And he genuinely felt like she deserved to have someone in love with her. While Patrick was wild and he's talented and he acts on impulse and he's all passion. He has so much charisma and he sometimes lacks logic or thinking. But he saw her as a human being and as a peer and not as this god, which is sometimes something that you kind of want. I can completely relate to this. I have been in this situation before where I have been liked by a guy who quite literally kind of saw me as a god. And while that sounds amazing and wonderful, I didn't want to be with someone who was a yes man to everything. I didn't want somebody who praised literally the ground that I walked on even when I was wrong. And honestly, it gets boring. There's the other drastic difference of it all with being with someone who does not see you as a god at all, sees you as a peer or sometimes even like less than, and that can sometimes seem so exciting to be with someone who you have to like earn their praise. They may not always treat you the best. They may make you chase and may make you want more. And I have been with both kinds of guys in the past, and I can see the excitement that comes with both of these. But I can also understand how both of these are simply just not enough, because Art is simply just not enough for Tashi, and Patrick is also just not enough for Tashi. They both have what each other lack. They have what each other need, so they should just be a throuple, damn. Art saying, I really want to kiss you right now.
I really want to kiss you right now.
Makes me want to gag. I want to fucking gag hearing that. I I really want to kiss you right now. But it just goes to show like what Art is really like. Like he's like a little fanboy for Tashi. Yeah, I really want to get it right now. Art got what he wanted. He wanted Patrick to be out of the picture of this throuple. He wanted Tashi all to himself. And without Patrick being there, he didn't have to worry about being, you know, this awful friend anymore where he had to like manipulate his way to Tashi. Then we see 2 years later at the Atlanta Open, Tashi is now Art's coach. Patrick shows up to this empty tennis court, literally wearing Tashi's old shirt, kind of showing like his immaturity of being like, I'm still fucking wearing my ex's old t-shirt that I stole from before, and I'm about to go see her. Kind of intimidating them, like watching them practice together. Him being like literally the only one in the stands. Also important to note how much more effort Art seemed to put into his serves when Patrick was sitting there and when he acknowledged him. So then it's 3 a.m. in Atlanta. Okay. This is unfortunately where we find out that the only time that Tashi is interested in Patrick is not only when they are teenagers, but when they are adults as well. Tashi's literally drinking at 3 in the morning at this hotel and listening to them talking about her old competitor, Anna Mueller, the racist, how she won Wimbledon, and how she's having a great season. There hasn't been anyone on the women's side who can give her a challenge, which is such a shame because that is where Tashi should have been. That's when Patrick appears in the window, his little creepy ass, with his I told you shirt, and Tashi's literally sighing. She's like literally sighing there like as if she has no choice. She's like, okay, here we go again. Like she doesn't even like think to reject him because he comes inside the hotel. The music starts again. She mentions to him her engagement ring, how it's Art's grandmother's, and how she did in fact die of a stroke. Kind of how Patrick was foreshadowing.
What about my grandmother?
I hope she has a fucking stroke.
They both acknowledge that Patrick is still in the picture. Patrick says he misses her. She does not respond in usual Tashi fashion. And because Tashi needs that excitement in her life that clearly she is lacking from her relationship with Art, probably this deep down level of resentment and hatred that she has towards Art, she starts making out with Patrick. Now Art comes down to the lobby and catches them talking to each other in the lobby, gets approached by fans, and when he looks back, Tashi and Patrick are gone. He knows that they probably hooked up. He is well aware of the Atlanta situation, okay? He's just simply in denial, or maybe just trying to like ignore it because it hurts so fucking bad. Fast forward 8 years later, 2 weeks prior to the challenger, Tashi and Art have it made. Beautiful fucking hotel room. They're filthy fucking rich. Art is a professional tennis player and he literally has it all. Trainers, nutritionists, assistants, physiotherapists. It's also shown that Art had a surgery on his shoulder, which Tashi mentioned she would kill to have a recovery like he had.
Fucking stab someone.
Which definitely could lead to her resentment against him. Tashi's listening to the news and how he's being perceived and talked about, clearly studying and preparing for his next matches. She's also working for a billboard of an ad that Art and Tashi are the face of for Aston Martin. When working on the ad, she like specifically brackets her face and wants her head to be like tilted up a little bit more and not seemingly be as behind Art as she is. Instead of just saying game changer, she wants it to say game changers, plural. They have a kid together that is at least, I think, like 5, I think. Sponsored by Uniqlo. He's getting stopped by fans. Like, he's a very big fucking deal. The energy between Tashi and Art is very tense while they're in the locker room. They're not really speaking to each other. It doesn't really seem kind of like this husband and wife dynamic because at the end of the day, they are now coach and tennis player between the two of them. And Tashi says to Art, decimate that little bitch. For which then, Tashi puts out her hand for Art to spit out his gum into, just like Patrick used to for him. Art just can't win. Art can't win. He cannot catch his footing because Art is lacking confidence. Art is lacking that confidence in his life, whether that is because of his injury or because Patrick is not in his life anymore or because he's not really having to fight for Tashi. But he has the life. It doesn't really feel like he has anything to fight for anymore. You know what I mean? He is like at the pinnacle, the top of the top. And so he is lacking that drive that he once had when he had to fight for something. So Tashi decides that she's going to put Art into a challenger game, which is a lower tier game with much lower stakes, just in order for Art to get his confidence back. Now, knowing what we know about Tashi, knowing how smart she is, how manipulative she is, how everything is so calculated, the only thing that is not calculated in her life was her knee injury. Is it possible that she already knew that Patrick was going to play in this challenger? I think yes. I think Tashi is way too smart to not know that Patrick was going to be in this challenger playing against Art. Art says he loves Tashi. Tashi says, I know. Tashi doesn't ever give that bid back. When someone says, I miss you, I love you to her, she does not respond to that. So then we go and see Patrick's perspective, where he is trying to get a hotel room. Not really a fancy place at all, but his card is declining. He's trying to use his charisma to get a night for free. He's like, I'll literally give you a signed racket. For Patrick to be a professional tennis player and to be this rich kid that he once grew up as, it is kind of odd to see that he cannot afford a hotel room that is not that expensive. But we do know that he decided to go pro very young. We do know he has a big ass ego. We know he only has a few good years left because of the timing of this all. And he decided to live by the earnings that he makes from playing these low tier tournaments. This is the consequences that Patrick gets for not wanting to be a student of Tashi, for not wanting to be part of Tashi's fan club. On the way to the parking lot that Patrick ends up sleeping in, he's listening to a podcast or the news about politics, which is kind of interesting. Considering he's a rich kid, that might, give us a little insight to his background. It seems like he's estranged from his family based off of conversations within the movie. Why is the real question? Is it because he does not want to communicate with them? Is it maybe because of his sexuality that we'll get to in a little bit? I mean, the guy literally cannot even park straight in the parking lot. So the next morning when he goes to check in for the challenger, he is literally starving. And the person who checks him in literally gives him half of her bagel. He starts asking for advance payment on the prize money because he really needs a place to stay and sleep instead of his car. And the person checking him in literally says, you could literally just lose today because that means that we have to cut your check today. And it's something that Patrick genuinely even considers for a moment. This is not the first time that we see Patrick not playing up to the level that he knows he can and basically manipulating the game in his favor. Sometimes it's for Art to be happy with him. Later on, we'll see for Tashi to be happy with him. And in this situation, it's for him to maybe have a place to stay that night. That is when Patrick finds out that Art is a wild card within the challenger, which is definitely a fucking wild card to Patrick. Phil's Tire Town Challenger Round 1 result. Patrick ends up beating his competitor. And instead of getting the money that day, he decides to go on Tinder to find a place to stay that night. His bank account is fucking empty. And we also see that he is canonically bi, because both of his options for Tinder are both men and women. And he's quite literally swiping yes to every man and woman that he sees on Tinder. One could argue he is desperate for a place to stay, and that may be why he had put men down in his options. I personally do think, based off of the rest of the movie and his relationship with Art, I do think Patrick likes men as well. At the end of the day, he is a rich kid cosplaying as poor. I think his decision to potentially stay with a man is his own choice because that man is bi. That night, Patrick decides to go on a date with Helen in White Plains, New York. Coincidentally, driving past that Aston Martin Game Changers ad. They have zero chemistry, of course, duh. But who is at the bar? None other than Tashi. This is presumably the first time that they have seen each other in 8 years since Atlanta, and she's pissed seeing him there. Tashi mentions Art can't see us here. He thinks I planned this to humiliate him. Patrick said, didn't you? Which Tashi says,
Not this part.
Tashi does a callback and says, you typically fall apart in the second round, similar to what she told him the night in her dorm room.
You always think you won before the match is over.
However, once again, is Tashi talking about relationships or tennis? But Patrick got his fucking place to stay that night at Helen's. Earlier in the week before the challengers in the hotel, Tashi is studying, trying to help Art for his match, but she's alone, and Patrick wants to talk to Tashi over a cigarette. However, Tashi still does not smoke. She does not change. However, Patrick still does smoke because he does not change. I saw someone mention how Art is kind of moldable. We have seen Art in the past smoke. Could this be because of Patrick's influence? Because we never see Art smoking again on screen. Probably has something to do with Tashi being in his life and being his coach and, trying to make him have a healthy lifestyle. But I think it's kind of trying to show the symbolism that Tashi never changes. Patrick never changes. Art, however, can change depending on who he is with, because he is a codependent little bitch. Patrick teasingly says, I'm gonna propose something to you, but you're gonna be angry, in which he asked Tashi to become his coach. He starts shitting on Art, saying that Art is only going to retire as someone really, really good, whereas he believes that he himself could win a Grand Slam. Tashi slaps Patrick, tells him,
You have a better shot with a handgun in your mouth.
and then finally tells him what we've all been thinking, which is go home and go to your parents, ask your parents for some money, and stop trying to be some down on your luck professional tennis player when you're over 30. But Patrick sees right through Tashi and says, you hate Art. You resent him. And you know you do. Art is ready to be done as a tennis player, and Patrick knows that. But Tashi is not done. Tashi is playing tennis through Art because she herself cannot physically play tennis anymore. And so it kills her for the thought of Art retiring, especially just as someone really, really good rather than someone incredible. Patrick brings up if Art knows about Atlanta, and he's like, I'm on to you. I think you came here to see me. I think you knew that I was going to be here at the Challengers. Why else would you come here? Which is true. Why else would she come here? And Patrick says that he's going to beat Art, and that everyone knows that. I mean, Art knows that. Art does not have the confidence to think that he's going to beat Patrick. Tashi does not have the confidence that Art is going to beat Patrick. But Patrick gives Tashi his number, and she pockets it. Similar to kind of how at the beach, he invites her back to her hotel room, and she's like, yeah, fucking right. All right. Yeah, whatever. And then she still goes. And then Patrick gives Tashi his number. And she's like, yeah, fuck you. Yeah, right. But then she still pockets it. And guess what? You're never going to guess what happens after that. So the night before Patrick and Art are playing against each other, Patrick tries to rekindle his relationship with Art in the sauna with his peebus out. Patrick is pretty much like mocking Art for being a finalist within the Challenger, because he's like, what the fuck are you doing here? Asking him to go easy on him, like dick out. Patrick even suggests that maybe Art hates him and resents him because she was once into Patrick. And he's like, yeah, when we were teenagers. He's like, yeah.
When we were teenagers.
And then we see a flashback to Atlanta where they did in fact hook up as adults while Tashi and Art were engaged. Art says that Patrick has more at stake than Art does, whether or not, you know, who wins the Challenger. Patrick really needs the money. However, Art really needs the confidence. And his marriage. Art basically gets the confidence to like belittle Patrick and be like,
I'm just stopping by, man. This is where you live.
Art confesses that he doesn't think that Patrick ever grew up and that Art actually wins the points that do matter. And Patrick's like, I don't matter. And Art's like,
Not even to the most obsessive tennis fan in the entire world.
which I think is referring to Tashi. And that's when Patrick says, are we talking about tennis? Which Art says, what else do we have to talk about? And Patrick says,
I miss playing with you.
ultimately, I do think that's what Patrick really misses, is playing with Art. I think Patrick misses his little throuple. I think he wishes that it had lasted. I don't think Patrick truly genuinely cares about tennis. I think he cares about getting by in life and about having Tashi and Art in his life. In the hotel the night before the Challenger, Art is begging for Tashi to say that it does not matter whether or not he beats Patrick the next day.
Tell me it doesn't matter if I win tomorrow.
But Tashi's not giving that to him.
You tell me if it matters. You're the professional competitor, Art.
To Tashi, it does matter. Tashi wants him to win every single game if it were up to him. Every single game matters so much in her eyes because he is ultimately playing for two people. She even asks Art, am I Jesus? To which he says, yeah.
I'm just asking that you love me no matter what.
What am I, Jesus?
Yeah.
And I kind of think he really believes that. We talked about it this whole video. Art sees Tashi as a god. Art sees Tashi as a tennis player first, I think before his wife. He looks up to her and I think he is truly scared of her. This is the second time that Tashi hears this week, but Art says to her, I'm gonna say something to you, but it's gonna make you really angry. Except when Patrick says it, it's in a teasing way, and when Art says it, he's fearing for his life kind of way.
I'm gonna say something. It's probably gonna make you angry.
Gonna make you angry.
In which then he tells her that he is ready to retire from tennis. Tashi is not ready for Art to retire because he is a product of Tashi. So that's when Tashi says to him that she's gonna leave him the next day if he does not win.
If you don't win tomorrow, I'll leave you.
I don't think ultimately it's the winning part of it all. I think it is ultimately she is no longer attracted to the man standing in front of her, for losing all hope, for literally kind of being a failure in her eyes, and for not being able to get his footing back. Similar how she didn't want Patrick playing really poorly while he was on tour when they were in college. She does not want to be embarrassed. Here's where we bring in Please, Please, Please by Sabrina Carpenter. Heartbreak is one thing, my ego's another. Don't you dare embarrass me, motherfucker. So what happens that night? Tashi hits up Patrick, none other than to go drive and talk where he thought they were gonna go hook up.
Not here to fuck you, Patrick.
You're not?
No.
This is where Tashi asked for Patrick to lose the Challenger the next day in order to let Art win, just so that he can get his confidence back, then win the US Open. Tashi and Patrick start fighting and have this like massive passion with this fight, similar to the kind of fight that they had in the dorm room, something that we never saw between Tashi and Art. Tashi is so desperate for him to lose that she even offers to Patrick to have sex with him. That means he'll lose against Art. This is the most dramatic Renaissance fight ever. She literally spits on him and he likes it. And then they have sex, in which he says, make sure that you make him feel like he earned it. Right underneath her and Art's Game Changer Aston Martin collab ad. I think this is why I kind of see Art as so pathetic in my eyes, is that ultimately everyone is just kind of trying to like protect his feelings and like coddle him the whole time. He needs to feel like he earned this game rather than him finding his own confidence to win it himself, which could definitely be a huge part of his lack of confidence to begin with. It's the day of the challenger. Oh my god, finally. Patrick is seen touching the bruise on his arm from the fight that they had the night before. I initially thought that these were track marks because we didn't have context of the fight the night before. I think that was intentional of the way that they try to show that in the movie. What kind of path has Patrick been led down? Something important to note is that the umpire is Zendaya's brother / assistant. So Patrick ends up winning the first set. Art ends up winning the second. It's kind of rough to watch. It's hard, okay? It doesn't feel like they're playing a good fucking game of tennis. There's a lot of tension. Neither of them can seem to get their footing right. We're seeing balls get hit into the net. Art starts to lead in the final game, but instead of Patrick intentionally losing, he decides to indicate to Art his signal, putting the ball up to the neck of the racket, showing him that he in fact did sleep with his wife. The same signal they used like 13 years prior. Art immediately gets like, what the fuck is going on? He literally says, fuck off. This is the first time that we ever see Tashi confused in the game at all. Like, this is the first time that she is not in on the manipulation of things. After this happens, after the signal is given, this is the first time that we see, since they were kids, Art and Patrick having a real fucking game of tennis. Art had that passion and that rage that he needed in order to play with confidence, something that Patrick is full of and Art lacks. Art, however, is filled with strategy and resources and money, something that Patrick does not really have. So we are watching this intense game between Art and Patrick playing some real fucking tennis, and for the first time in the movie, we finally see Tashi left out of this love triangle. It's always been one of the guys left out of the love triangle, but now it is finally her turn to be left out, but she just doesn't know it. I think Patrick genuinely has a passion for Art. It was almost like Patrick was doing Art a favor by showing him that he had slept with his wife so that Art can play his best and truly feel like he deserves to win that game. I think Tashi genuinely does have like a kink for bringing the two of them together. I read the screenplay and there are sex scenes that are cut out of this movie, and I think that it is perfect. I love a good sex scene, okay? Who doesn't? But there are scenarios where there's too much of that. For example, Sam Levinson. Them cutting out so many sex scenes and relying on the horniness of the tennis games was genius. There's so much intimacy between them on the court once the game starts getting really good. The sweating, the literal moaning and grunting, the angles, and each point in the match serving as a climax. I think all of them ultimately do better as a love triangle, as a throuple, because they all get what they want. Patrick gets Art, Art gets Tashi, and Tashi gets tennis. The game ends with both of them jumping for the volley. They collide at the net, and they embrace, and they hug, and they tackle each other, and they make sweet love on the court. I wish. And Tashi screams. Similar to when she finally saw some good fucking tennis between her and Anna Mueller. Ultimately, we don't know who wins the game, and I don't think it even matters who wins the game, because I think all of them got what they had wanted. Like I said, Patrick finally got his relationship back with Art. Art got his relationship back with Tashi and making her proud, and Tashi watched some good fucking tennis. How do I think that they should proceed? Be a throuple. Damn. Like, Lily is gonna have 2 dads, and what about it? Damn. I love challengers. Fucking love this movie. Didn't think I'd be making a long-ass chronically online girl video about it, but here we are. I quite literally said in the beginning, I'm not gonna do a video about this. I'm not gonna touch it because I love this movie so much, but I just had to touch it. Oh no, Patrick and Art touched me. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please make sure that you leave it a like because it helps me out so much. Also leave a comment on anything that I missed out on, any differing opinions that you may have with me, fight with me in the comments. I don't give a fuck. No, I'm sure that every person who watches this movie is gonna have a different perspective, and I love to read about yours. Make sure you subscribe if you want to be nasty. If not, you're disgusting. Also make sure your bell notifications on so you know every single time I post, or else you're gross. I have a podcast that comes out every other Monday, and I have merch. If you want to follow me on my Instagram, Twitter, Depop, Spotify, it's just at Nicole Rafiee. And if you want to follow me on my TikTok, it's at Nikki Nasty. If I stand like this, does it look like they're kissing my neck? Whoa, boys, I'm taken. Come on, damn.